Hello, welcome to Zenith Workouts. I'm Rebecca Libby. Today we're filming a series where we're focused on learning to control the movement of our low back and bony pelvis while we increase mobility of our hips and increase the strength of our deeper core, our functional center. This is a great series if you have you know, repeated episodes of low back pain combined with maybe some stiffness in your hips. This series, this particular class, you will need something round. I have an orange. A grapefruit is great, a toning ball, something to put on your low back while we're on hands and knees to monitor that it's staying nice and still. Something that you don't mind if it falls off. Like an apple would be bruised, right? So that's the only prop you need. Otherwise, we're going to start on our belly. And if you're not comfortable just laying flat on your belly, then there's a video called How to Be Comfortable on Your Belly. Or like a tutorial, and you could check that out first, because there are ways to modify just laying on your belly in order to be comfortable in your low back. But if you're able to lay on your belly without any sort of props or modifications, then you're coming down. The feet are going to start by being close together, if possible. If you need that little space between them at first because of hip tightness, great. But your goal is to bring those feet narrow, those knees narrow, those thighs narrow, to be in your neutral pelvis, which just means really where you land on your belly. And the hands, the head can be resting on the back of your hands for this one. If you're not comfortable in a shoulder or something in order to get here, you could put a rolled up towel or a pillow under the forehead so that you weren't sort of mashed into the mat like that. And our first exercise is just going to be to bend one knee. But our whole goal is that as we bend our knee, we don't move our pelvis. We don't lift our pelvis. We don't sway our low back. There's nothing crazy going on there. And your self-check is, if you would like to put your hands underneath your hip pointers, then as you bend your knee, you shouldn't feel the hip pointer dig into your fingers more. You shouldn't feel more pressure. You also shouldn't feel it lift away and become less pressure. So that's usually our self-check. So think about gently tucking the tailbone, very gently, down towards the mat maybe. Think about that core breath where you breathe in, and as you breathe out, you draw in the low belly. It's like you're trying to draw your belly away from your leggings or your shorts or whatever you're wearing. And as you bend one knee, the knee is the only thing that moves, the lower leg's the only thing that moves, and you lower it back down. And you repeat on the other side. This is a hard one for me personally. I run and I am tight in the front of my legs. So as I bend the knee and release it, my upper body wants to move around, like bob around a little bit. So I have to really think about drawing in the belly, and controlling the movement. This might be an easier movement for you, but whatever stage you're at, the goal is that there's no movement in that bony pelvis. If you need the hip pointers or the fingers under the hip pointers to monitor for movement, that's a great self-check. We're going to hold this next one with the knee bent, and it can be bent just a little bit. It doesn't have to be bent to its maximum. You can flex the foot, or you can point, whatever feels good. But now we're going to try to take the weight of our thigh off the mat. And this is going to require a little bit of abdominal work. So nice breath in to prepare. Before you lift the thigh, I want you to draw in with the lower abdominals, especially. Think of lifting the pelvic floor maybe, if that helps. And then float the thigh off the mat and lower it back down. This is a horrible one for me to demonstrate for you because I can barely do it. Your goal is, again, there's no movement of your low back. And if you do your self-check and you have your fingertips under the hip pointers, there's no increase in pressure from your hip pointers. Right? So as you can see, there's no visible space that develops between my thigh and the mat. but I managed to take the weight of the thigh off. It's a lot of work for me. And if it is for you too, then it's an exercise that you need, right? Because you'll be strengthening the back side of the hip, you'll be strengthening the glutes, you'll be strengthening the hamstrings. You're combining that with activity in your core, your deep belly. And all the while, especially if you're chronically tight in your hips, you're working to lengthen the front of the hip flexor and the anterior fascia. So make that one the last one on the right. Lower it, shake it out, and we'll do the same thing with the left. So you do your knee bend first, the pelvis stays still. Take a nice breath in, make the foot do whatever you want, either point the toe or flex or keep it just a little bit loose and neutral. And as you breathe out, you draw in with the low belly, you think of keeping that tailbone gently tucked, and you unweight that left leg. It's a small movement. Maybe it's a no movement, like mine. But if you do run or bike or, really work your quadriceps a lot, the front thighs, this is a really nice balancing exercise to do. If you sit a lot, or if you just have those, you didn't win the genetic lottery when it came to your hips, and you're tight. Let's do 2 more like this. There should be no discomfort in the low back. I'm going to do 1 more. I think we did more on the other side. Yeah, no discomfort in the low back. And remember that you need the strength of the abdominals in the front to balance what the low back's doing. Straighten out the legs now. We're going to do straight leg raise on our belly. And again, you can have the hands monitoring underneath the hip pointers. That's usually an important one here. You can let the head turn to the side if you want. If you want to rest it or rest the forehead or put that pillow underneath. Take a nice breath in, and before you lift the leg, I want you to think of drawing in with the belly again, but also maybe if you're lifting the right leg, think of squeezing the right bum cheek, like the right glute. Activate that before you lift the leg, and see if it helps you to control and stay steady in the hip pointers, right? So there's a few different patterns that people show here. A lot of times it's the movement of the pelvis, right? We lift the leg, and each time the hip pointer drives down into the mat, showing that we're not doing a pure movement at the hip, we're doing a lot of motion with our pelvis, which is not bad in itself, but if you have back pain, it could be a contributor. And the other favorite we have is to arch the low back. So we want to get the leg higher, so we really curve the low back. And that's not what you're looking for either. You're looking for the pelvis to stay nice and rooted to the mat, as far as like the tailbone is a little bit tucked, the pubic bone stays down towards the mat, and it's a pure movement from the hip. And if you're sitting here saying, I don't even know how to begin to keep the pelvis still, that's okay. This is one of those exercises where it's a frustrating one, but if you do have recurrent low back pain, it's worth trying to address this pattern of motion. Draw in with the low belly. Think of tucking the tailbone. Think of squeezing the bum muscle on the side that you're going to lift the leg. And don't worry about lifting the leg high. Again, I think you can see here, I don't get a lot of distance between my thigh and my mat. I get more than with the knee bend, but, I'm relatively stiff in the hips, and that's what's available. But it's about doing what is available to you with the control in the low back. 1 more on each side. Perfect. And then relax. If you want to just let the feet sort of follow each other with bent knees side to side, if that feels good, and relaxing, through your hips and spine, you can do that. Or you can come up gently from there and rock the hips back towards the heels into the opposite position for the low back, like a rounded low back. I personally like this a lot after, but it just depends what feels good in your body. Right? In this position, you're trying to get your sit bones down towards your heels. You might be limited by knee movement or ankle movement or hip movement, but that's your sort of your intention. And the low back is nice and rounded, like someone's got a hook and they're pulling that low back up towards the ceiling. And just take some breaths here. You can rock side to side if it feels good. If you need, the knees could be a little bit wider. There's a lot of wisdom in this position. It opens the ankles all the way, it bends the knees all the way, it bends the hips, it lengthens the low back. So, don't push it into a position that's not comfortable, but work to be able to get there if you can, because it's a really nice movement for the body, for the joints. Now you need your round object. So we're on hands and knees now, and your round object is going to tell you if you're keeping a neutral spine. So depending on your body proportions, this doesn't always work. If you've got like super long arms, or as my friend says, a positive ape index, ape, APE, then you might find that the ball always wants to roll off your back, like downward in the center, because if you're like that, your shoulders are much higher than your hips. So just see if it works for you. It's just that it's hard to know if your pelvis is staying still here or if your low back's staying still. And if you have that, object right in the small of your back, right in the center of the lowest part of your spine, it's a really nice feedback when you don't have an instructor right there with you. So the fingers are nice and spread, right? The hands are right under the shoulders. The knees are right under the hips. If you have the knees too far up, right, then you probably will struggle to be able to move the leg, right? You do want to have only the knees, under the hips and not beyond. Make sure that you're not collapsed in your shoulder blades at first, that you have that chest pressed away from the mat. You're thinking of broad shoulder blades. You're thinking of drawing in lightly with the low belly. And we're going to just start with arm movement. So take a nice breath in. Press stronger into your left arm. Really use that shoulder to stabilize and reach the right arm forward. Lower it down and work to switch sides. I use the same breath that we've been using through this whole series. So I exhale, I draw in with my low belly, I feel a little activity in my pelvic floor, and I really feel a lot of strength around my shoulder blade as I raise the opposite arm off the floor. So I'm raising my left arm, my right shoulder blade, I'm pressing down into the mat, I'm lifting that, that breastbone away from the mat. And it doesn't matter how far you reach the arm forward, right? It could, as soon as you take the weight of the arm off, it doesn't matter what you do with it. You're trying to keep that low back nice and still. So don't try to, overextend at the shoulder unless you want to focus on that as a, mobility exercise. But really it's about, can you keep the ball, the orange, the grapefruit, whatever you've chosen to put on your back, your hot cup of coffee, your platter of champagne flutes, if you really are into performing. Make that one your last one with the arm. And then we're going to do the leg. We're going to warm up with the leg out to the side. So the right knee is going to slide out to the side, staying close to the mat. Close to the mat, close to the mat, close to the mat. And you allow it to lift off just what you can control without losing that ball. And then lower it back down. And then you're going to do the left leg. Right? And lower it back down. And then as we're doing this, you may have realized that you could cheat a little bit. So if I exaggerate the curve of my back, oh, look at what I can do. Besides looking ridiculous, that is not going to help you achieve your goals. So make sure that, you are also drawn in with the abdominals. If you tend to poke your low ribs forward because you have been used to using your back muscles to grip with and stabilize, you're also thinking of drawing, that solar plexus area back. And also, as we repeat this, what tends to happen is people get interested in their legs and they look down. And then you find out you're here and you wonder why your neck and shoulders hurt later. So try to keep the head as a nice extension compared to the rest of the spine, in line with the rest of the spine. Let's change the movement at the leg here. If you need a break with the wrists, you can take one anytime, rock back. But here we are doing a hip extension. So you are reaching back with that right leg. You're getting the knee nice and straight, and then you're lifting the whole leg off the mat and then returning it back from where it came. And then you're changing to do the same thing with the left leg. Right? A lot of times, not only will we tip as we lift the leg and find the ball rolling off, but we'll also, another cheat that we use is to shift out of the midline. So the ball is staying on my back, but my hips are moving side to side. My whole pelvis is not staying over the center of the mat. So think of a string hanging down from your tummy button. It hits a spot below it on the mat, and that stays nice and still. Right? As you repeat the movement. Right? The stronger you stay in the arms and the shoulders, the easier it's going to be for the waist, the pelvis, the low back, to find that, nice stable position. The more you're going to support that happening. And as the leg gets to its highest point, our tendency is to arch the back, which might not make the ball fall, but might give you back pain. So as the leg gets up to its highest point, you're drawing in with the low belly, you're really lifting here, right? To keep that low spine well supported and to work on the mobility of the hips. Good. Last one, let's hold this one with the leg back. Let's do a little challenge here. Let's let the leg drift out to the side a little bit and pull it back to the center. Just for 4. I know this is a beginner video, but I think you can do it. Right? The tummy button stays centered over a spot below it on the mat. The ball stays nicely on your back. You stay strong and broad in your shoulder blades. Change sides. Do that little repeater on the other side. Draw in with the low belly. Lightly draw the low ribs back if you've let them pop towards the mat. The leg stays at the same height as you go out just a little bit and you pull it back in. Beautiful. And after 4, release it. You can get the ball off your back again and just rock the hips back towards the heels, getting wide in your knees if you need to, or keeping them together if you can. And just give those, the wrists a little roll. If it's comfortable, you can bring the hands around by the feet, because letting the elbows sort of come towards the mat and the shoulder blades spread, that's a really nice, opening between the shoulder blades and allowing yourself to relax the muscles that you worked in your upper body as you did that. And there you go. You can use the hands for support if you need to help yourself roll back up and come to kneeling. And there you go. That's our series. So I hope you enjoyed. If you find one video harder than the others, maybe spend a little more time on that, because you wanna strive for that balance. And then when this is flowing easy, we can always make it harder and more fun. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Ciao.